Hey everybody, welcome back. It's the new year. Christmas is done. All I can say is, phew. We cleared the deck today, which doesn't happen very often. That means that all the shipping is out. There's one reshipment we had to do, so we have one package set to go out tomorrow at this point. But caught up. That's what I know. And we got Randy here
Hey everyone.
from the Aquarius podcast, if you can believe it.
Or Aquarium podcast, depending on who you're talking to.
That's right. Yeah, so for those of you that don't know, that didn't see the other video that YouTube suppressed because it was terrible. Actually, the video was amazing. Just the subject was terrible. Randy is the new director of operations, and my most common question I get is, what does that mean? And so I thought we could kind of talk about that a little bit, like what is it you actually do? And you guys can field questions about kind of the business and fish stuff and really whatever. Like there's not too many things that are, off limits today. So the first thing, I want to get it rolling. You guys can come up with questions, and I'll field those questions to Randy. But my question is, and I thought of it 20 minutes ago.
Oh, great.
So my question is, what are some things that, as a consumer, because you shopped at my store for like, let's say a year or something. I don't know how long it was, but let's say it's a year. What are the things where you're like, you would walk away and be like, if I own that store, I'd change this. And then like the second part of that question is, I guess, now that you work there, has it changed? Like, oh, he's not doing that because of this, or is it like, oh, we should still do that, in my opinion?
Yeah, I think for me the one thing I would have changed as a consumer would have been on the weekends, right? So just the way that my personal life is, my wife works on weekends, so I get the full Saturday and Sunday with my son, who's a toddler. Love him to death, but taking a toddler into a fish store is not exactly the easiest thing to do out there.
Yes, leave him home.
Yeah, leave him at home. Just have a couple Hot Pockets out, cut up for them, make sure they're cooled down. But going into your store though on the weekend, it is kind of a to-do in the local like aquarium scene. Like people locals go to your store on the weekend. People from out of town come to your store on the weekend. It's a very, very popular place. And so trying to go and get some cardinal tetras from your store when there's, maybe 3 or 4 people working in the location, and that may actually be on the high side, and there's a long line of people, it can be very difficult when you have a toddler, right? And it's just you, right? Your spouse isn't there to take the kid outside to go run around or sit on the golden lions like he loves to do. So as a consumer, I would have said, well, Corey, if you could staff the store a little bit more, or make it so you can have like a pre-order of, hey, I want 10 cardinal tetras, I'll be there within an hour. Can somebody bag them up when they have time, and I'll just pick them up and pay and go. Now that I work for the co-op, I see that there's just it just doesn't, like, there's very few people that you can bring on just for the weekend shift. I feel we've got one employee that we are able to do that with, but I don't know if that's something where we would be able to find 1 or 2 other people that would want to take on a weekend only kind of job. And then the whole bagging fish up in advance. What happens if people flake and they don't get their order? Then all of a sudden now we've got 17 bags of fish. That where are we going to store them? How do we keep track of them? And then we have to rotate them back into a tank. So working at the co-op, I see now that isn't something that is ideal. And actually, I did actually place one online order. I felt incredibly guilty because you're 30 minutes away. Yeah. But I just knew for like a 2-week period I wasn't going to be able to make it into the shop. Yeah, I think you had just gotten the large intake sponges back in stock, and I'm like, oh man, I need to get those. I need to squirrel them away like a hamster or a squirrel, I guess, for that saying. So I actually placed an online order and had them delivered, 30 minutes down the road. So I felt kind of guilty about that, but at the same time, I got the product that I wanted.
No, I mean, we realize it's the problem, and the problem I always tell people is every year our revenue grows by double. And that doesn't mean profit does or anything like that, but the amount of people that go through the store or online website doubles every year. And so even if we like fix the problem today, we will have that problem again in 1 year. And there is a point where can only be so many registers and so many bodies in the store to check people out quickly. And we've tried running much bigger staff and that kind of stuff. And yes, there's a bunch more overhead money, but then there's also just the fact of like, there's always a run between like noon and 4 on a weekend, because then after 4, people are like, oh, I got night plans, I'm gonna do stuff.
And I learned this to come in the evening, like right before you guys close.
The best possible time you can come into my store
Sunday, like a Sunday evening,
is when the Seahawks are playing. You get the whole store to yourself. So it makes it really hard to staff when you do have things like sports events and weather, and there's a bunch of things that play into it, and then knowing that like solving the problem doesn't even solve it. Like, let's say we can put 100 people through the retail store with optimizations right now. 1 year from today, that no longer works, and then you're right back to where you were. And so it becomes, we focus online, and that's what we have been doing, so that yes, you could order online. You know, it's a weird thing that we're trying to navigate, and I won't say I've given up on it, but at the same time, that's not where my focus is. Like, I've thought about numbering systems, and we've looked from like the DMV. You take a number, you hit the button, boom. You know, okay, next, you know, person number 26, we'll take them. But there's a lot of stuff that actually goes on where you kind of like, you need to help someone, then let them marinate, go help 2 other people, come back. Like, do you make a decision yet? Did you figure out what you're going to do yet? You know, because they have a question like, what can fit in my 20-gallon tank? You show them 17 different options, and then you got to let them figure it out. And so it's a hard thing. Plus, as we grow, we're hiring on new people, you know, so there's that aspect of it. And in general, I think it's just getting not harder, but it's not. I like to fix problems where you can actually fix it instead of like, we could put a Band-Aid on it. We could have another 6 months of people not complaining. Yeah. Like, well, sure.
Yeah, and there also is another unique subset of co-op customer, and by no means I don't want to disparage them at all, but there are people that will make a bit of a journey to come to the co-op, and you know, they're not a local that just wants to come in, get some ICX and bounce. Like, they actually want to spend some time. Like, they want to feed Murphy, they want to see Murphy, they want to engage in the staff. You know, they hope there's a rare Corey sighting, so maybe they might be able to pin you down for an autograph or something of that nature, or shake your hand and say thank you for all the content you put out. But sometimes those customers can also tie up some of the employees with, you know, less than mission critical kind of questions. And so again, I don't mean to say, you know, no, don't come to the store and ask those questions. It's just another unique challenge that I don't think other stores necessarily have to deal with like the co-op does. So.
Yeah, I mean, most people don't have.
It's a good problem to have.
Internet famous pufferfish that like, oh, I've got to come from Sydney, Australia to feed this thing. Like, they don't have that aspect. They don't have the, oh, I've seen Robert on video. I've seen you on video. I want to talk to you and all that kind of stuff. Like, they just have the, I'm a local. I walked in. I need to buy some fish. Walk back out. Like, I ran that store for 3 years, and it was way different than what it is right now. Like, it's almost a different animal.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong. Like, I think it's a great problem to have. Like, you know, to try to solve like how we balance that out when you have so many people that want to engage with us on a physical level and be in the store, I think is a really, really good challenge and a really good problem to try to solve so that everybody has a great experience. So
yeah. $2 super chat from Joel from New Zealand. He says he's well aware of the culture. Like, Randy, let's fire Corey. Thoughts?
That's the praise. Like, if I say Corey needs to get fired this week, that's like Corey's doing an awesome job. Like, that's that's how we
use like, we're gonna fire someone as a joke. Usually, like, instead of like, if you're talking about people getting fired at a normal job, you're like, oh my god, are they actually laying people off? Usually it's like, you've done something so crazy good, like, oh, you're fired. Like, it's so jokingly, like,
he threatened to fire me 5 times last week. It was awesome.
Yeah,
I felt pretty
exactly. That means they're like, wow, you really figured that out. You're fired. You know, and half it's in jest. Well, all of it's in jest of like, you figured that out. I've been working on that for a while. You finally made that happen, type of thing. So. You know, and it goes for all the employees. Like, not everyone's firing each other, but it's keep it lighthearted there. Because there's, you know, I would say the last 5 weeks or so has been tough for, like, every employee. It's just never-ending orders coming in.
Yeah.
And so even when it's like, well, you didn't put anything on sale that week, it's like, yes, 40 semi-trucks full of equipment showed up that we need to stock and then sell the following week type of deal. Yeah. So
was it all day yesterday? I spent building boxes, I think. I spent a good portion of one of my days this week building boxes, doing styro liners,
nice.
Just so everybody could, you know, just to help with the warehouse side of things and get orders out. So
yeah, and it's, I mean, I do it too. Like, there's definitely days where we're both there and we're doing like the lowest level task. A lot of times you think the director of operations, and I warned him that, is that you have to do everything. So yes, we have to negotiate the next biggest deal in China or something like that, but then it's like, nope, boxes just got to get built right now. That's what has to get done today.
Yep.
So, Aquariums by Maxwell. Do you think it's odd that I can have any fish with my turtles in harmony? I have had rams, corays, plecos, shrimp, angels, guppies, and the list goes on. I find it a little bit odd, only that, like...
Are they vegetarian turtles?
Well, it could be
You
that.
only want pizza?
Yep.
Hmm.
I find it odd that you've never had a turtle eat a fish. Like, I keep fish with turtles, and I would say 99% of the time they don't eat the fish, but I don't think I could say never.
Yeah.
You know, you'd be like, well, they got really hungry, and I had a bunch of turtles, and then that thing like swam into its mouth.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, unless you're just feeding really, really heavy.
and you could, but at the same time, I still think it's profit focused versus
company. But you know, very early on, Jeff Bezos realized that it's all about customer growth, or growth comes through customer satisfaction. And so I would say that it's not so much that the customer focus has changed. It's just the scale at which we're doing things, and basically having direct access so that there's only one person above me that can veto a decision. Where in a larger corporation, there's just, you know, so many layers of management that are above you on the given totem pole. At least me in my position, like, you know, I've been the lowest person on the rung, and then I've been somebody that's made 2 or 3 levels up on the rung, but still, you know, fairly far from the head cheese in charge of things. And so now, being at Aquarium Co-op with just Corey as my direct boss, you know, if there's a decision that we need to make, it's you just run it by him. And sometimes I pulled the trigger on a couple things that didn't necessarily need his involvement. Only because I work directly with him and inherently have his blessing to make those kinds of decisions. So, yeah, I would say though that Corey definitely does have a very, very strong customer focus though. Yeah, so yeah,
I focus on the customer. We have to make money. Like, I realize my employees have to get paid.
Yeah.
Like, there's like that's the thing I think about is if I shut down the entire Aquarium Co-op. Tomorrow, there's still Aquarium Co-op on YouTube that will pay me like $9,000 a month. Like, clearly that's enough for me. So a lot of the decisions I'm making, like, is this going to help get, you know, like, hopefully this year we can get healthcare for all the employees. Like, can I make enough decisions in China and offset tariffs, offset shipping going up this year, all these things, so there's enough on the table so that all the employees now get healthcare. Like, that's, because that's, I always think, worst case scenario, shut everything down, I'm still a YouTuber at this point. So that's where a lot of my stuff goes. And obviously, for my people to need a job, gotta have customers. I gotta keep the customers happy. So I can trade it a little bit, I think, more freely than a corporation can, because I don't have to, like, there is one silent partner, but there's not like a board of directors that's gonna fire me if I don't get profits to be 7% up this quarter, or 1%, or meet a number. Like, we can do tons of things where, like, we're doing it right now. We're buying in mass bulk for a lot of products that at the end of this quarter, it's going to look like we ran at a deficit. But then in quarter 4, it's going to look like we made $1 billion because we bought so heavy, but we're buying heavy on, you know, stuff that doesn't really expire and that kind of stuff. It makes sense knowing that you're not living quarter to quarter, I think. So Randy has not swam in the 800-gallon yet. We do have a brand new look, though.
It does have a brand new look.
Yeah, you guys haven't seen it yet. Not that it's a finalized look by any means, but, you know, Jimmy was literally in the 800-gallon, not yesterday, day before. So, yes, it is a thing. Thanks for bringing Randy on live to answer questions and, oh, this is a hard word for me to say, disseminate information. Happy New Year to the Aquarium Co-op, and here's to success in all ways in 2019.
Thank you, Caleb.
What do you think your biggest, so what are we, 2 days into 2019? So now it's kind of go time, because you had like some ramp up time. You've been here since late November or early December, whatever that is. What do you think in the back of your mind is going to be like the takeaway of, like, I got this thing done that made a huge difference for the co-op a year from today? Like, is it warehouse adjustment? Is it purchasing power? Is it, you know, like, what's a thing where you're like, oh, I got a thing and I think this is gonna do it?
I think that'd be really hard to pick between those two, but I would say the warehouse optimization, ensuring that our warehousing and our logistics are dialed in, so that basically that customer obsession, that customer satisfaction, when our warehouse is dialed in, our inventory count is 100% on, we're shipping orders out, you know, within an hour or two of when we receive them. Like, we're doing a really quick turn, and we're getting the product to the customer in the best possible condition, in the quickest turnaround time at the most effective cost. So I think, I definitely think that would be like the thing at the end of our, you know, holiday peak season 2019. Looking back on that, that's what I want to be an accomplishment, because then everybody out there is super happy that they made a purchase through Aquarium Co-op.
Yeah, I would say this year we probably had 3% of people that at least let us know they were dissatisfied. And I would say there's probably 5% or more, and not dissatisfied, but if we have to email and you say, you know, we had 172 of these, turns out we sold 173 on accident. You know, no one likes to get that email. We run into that every big sale we run, and you've kind of run into this or seen it happen. The problem is we might sell all 172 of them, and then the retail store opens in the morning, and we sell one before we pulled them all. And so now we've actually sold 173, and someone has to get an email going, oh, we're actually out. We'll have it in 4 days. And you would think, like, why wouldn't you pull all those items before you open? Usually on that list, there's like, oh, there's 37 things to pull. Like, it's not just one item we're going to sell out. We're going to sell out a bunch. And half it becomes, why don't you just buy a ton more? We got to store it. We got to be able to afford it. That's kind of one of those things too. Like on a light, like a light item, like a light. You know, we bought a ton of lights, and we did have enough, but now we have excess, and you know, each one, like an Airstone, like, oh, there's 20 cents. You know, we overbought by 20 of them. We have $4 worth. Overbuy by 20 lights, and now you've got a couple $1,000, and you start doing that across products, it can be real problematic. So, you know, that's one of the things I want to navigate is figure out how to not have stockouts. Like we order a ton, but the selling in the store and online at the same time with the same thing has all its bonuses, but also has a few hiccups like that. You know, so that's there's nothing you can do when you can't tell the person in the store, even if you like ring it up and it tells you you're out, you can't tell someone, I'm sorry, that's already been sold. Like that will never happen. Like you can't do that. So yeah, I got to figure that one out. Rob Mace has got some info on detritus worms. Seeing them in a shrimp tank. I've got a 10-gallon with sand, vacuuming and risk getting babies or water change. Conflicting info everywhere. If you don't have snails, use flubendazole or fenbendazole, which is in heart deworming medication for dogs. Like there's ways you can get it, but go to like a Petco. And I think it's not an advantage, but it's like in a heartworm thing. I can't remember.
Does Revolution
might have it. If you look at the back of heartworm medication, you're gonna find it, and then you'll be like, and then you got to become a crazy like mad scientist of like, okay, I need 1/10 of a gram crushed up per 10 gallons and all that kind of stuff. But that's the way. That being said, I'm not convinced detritus worms are actually bad for a shrimp tank. People say that to me every single day, and then I usually say, like, did you see one eat one? Well, no, but that's what the internet says. And, like, I've had detritus worms or planaria with my shrimp, and I can never vouch for, like, oh, my colony crashed, or, oh, I even lost one. So I'm not convinced they're bad. And also, in the wild, they're typically in tandem. So, like, I realize we're in a captive environment, and, you know, proportionally, if you put a predator in a confined box with the prey, odds are going to go up in the predator's favor, whereas, you know, in the wild, maybe you've got a lot more space. But I just don't see it's the same thing. Like, I just don't believe that assassin snails are having that big of a negative impact on shrimp. You know, oh, I saw a video once. Like, yes, but if it was happening all the time, we'd see thousands of videos and be like, wow, look at this. This is insane. And I don't feel like we're seeing that. So, Big D Smoke, he's local in Tacoma. Yeah. Happy New Year. Thanks for everything you guys do. Well, thank you, buddy. Using a Python, can I mix water and a chlorinator in the tank when using a sponge filter, or do I need to premix? What do you do?
So I talked to Sean Hill about this. So interviewed Sean Hill from Fritz Aquatics, and that was one of the questions that I asked him at Aquatic Experience when we did a little live interview was, when do you add your dechlorinator? And I kind of stumped him there. So when I had him on my show, he had thought about it some more. And he had said that he actually fills up the water first and then adds his dechlorinator. So, but it's almost like you're split 50-50, right? So
yeah, I do the opposite.
Yeah, you do the opposite. So you let it lower it down, add your dechlorinator, then add the water.
So what I do in my actual flow when I don't have auto water change going is I drain my water, and then I get water flowing back. So like, let's say I hook the Python up at the sink and I get water flowing. The next thing would be grabbing dechlorinator and putting that in. That's just my workflow.
And that's actually that's what I do too.
Yeah. I have seen, and this is the thing is, from touching hundreds of thousands of fish over the years, maybe millions, who knows. I have seen there be instances a couple of times ever where, like, in our water, chlorine levels are like extra high because it's the middle of summer, and you put fish into a tank that just got like a huge water change, or let's say you just filled it up, and then you dump some dechlorinator in. I've seen it where they don't do well. Now, it could be like, okay, it was too big of a water change, could be like, but I've never seen that happen if I put dechlorinator in, and as it's filling, so like let's say it takes you 20 minutes to fill a tank, that's 20 minutes that dechlorinator was working versus like, that's also 20 minutes of maybe burning gills if you had chlorine in there. You know, the reality is for most people at like a 20-30% water change, because when you're putting the water back in, it's going to dilute down by 70%. Probably not high enough to do much damage no matter what you're doing. But if you're, you know, if it's as simple as, do I make this slightly more efficient? Yeah, I think putting in before, there is a crazy scenario where you put way too much prime in, let's say. Like, let's say you did a 90% water change and you only had very little water left and you put a bunch of prime in there. Technically, that could cause it to where there's not much oxygen left. But like in this scenario, you're already running a sponge filter and all that, so it'd be highly unlikely. The other things I do, I try to make the water splash back in. So instead of like it being under the water and just going in, I try to make it so it's like falling in or splashing, because chlorine, which a lot of people have chloramine, but chlorine can gas off. And so it's another one of those optimization things. Like, I don't think it's like the difference, but it is still more than nothing.
Yeah, so 2 points. I would say, if in my tanks with a sponge filter, I turn the air off so the sponge filter wouldn't be running. So then you don't, I guess my thought would be killing the beneficial bacteria would be one of my concerns as well.
So you turn it off so that it doesn't draw in water that would have chlorine.
Exactly. Okay. So I turn off like all power filters, obviously on the tank with an aqua clear. You're going to turn that thing off or it's just going to sputter.
Yeah.
Fill the water back up. From Foo the Flower Horn, I did take one of the YouTube channels out there. I took the plastic 1 liter bottle, used a soldering iron and put all the holes in the bottom of it. Used the Python hook with that cup hanging over into the tank, and so then you got that nice gentle splash. Because the Python hook is a great tool, but it will just dumps the water straight down, and then you've got a little crater that you have to stick your arm back into and fix. So that's one of the things that I do during water changes.
Interesting.
Although now the fish room does have auto water change, so now there's only a couple tanks I actually have to do a manual change to, which that reminds me, I actually need to do a water change on those tanks.
Yeah. So I'm always afraid of turning stuff off because then you forget to turn it back on. You only got to do that once to hate yourself.
I did that once for a podcast because my recording studio is in the same room as the two big tanks, so I shut down the equipment to have it be a little quieter for the podcast. Forgot to turn it back on for half a day. Nothing died, thankfully.
Yeah.
But I think that was enough for me to know. Like, I actually write a note to myself on a Post-it. Turn on fish tanks.
Yeah, my old boss used to, when he did stuff like that, he'd have a Post-it note and then a rubber band around it. And it was like so awkward. You'd want to fix it as fast as possible because it's always like crinkling and like. But it was the only way to like actually remember some of these things of like, oh yeah, I unplugged that, or oh, I've got the water running at the 200 gallon while I work on this one type of deal.
Get the collar with little spikes that kind of poke
exactly. Like, oh yeah, don't forget. So, all right, Flynn's Fish Forum giving us a $5 super chat. Flynn, you got to save that money, buddy. He got a job at the fish store, and I've been giving a little bit of mentoring. It's funny to watch someone else be like, are all customers insane? Like, just watching the normal stuff that happens, like, yep, that happens.
So this is what we do, right? We take a trip up to Canada. We do candid camera. We get somebody that Flynn doesn't know, and we just have them troll with like the most cliche aquarium customer
Flynn
questions
over the edge. Yeah,
and it's all hidden camera.
Yep,
Flynn, that's coming, buddy.
Yeah, and then the reality is, it is like he has YouTube experience, right? And he's in this chat. What people don't realize is, let's say how many people are watching? Like, let's say 700 people or something, if I can find that button here. Of those 1,100 people watching, right? Probably 900 of you guys are what I call an aquarist. So you've got like, oh, I've got a couple of tanks. I've been doing this for a while. And then there's like the 300 of you that it's like, this is your first tank. And you just don't know. You don't ask those questions. Or you don't know that it's like a cardinal sin to like have a fish caught and bagged and go through all the motions and be like, I changed my mind. I actually want this one. Because it's like all the stress and like that's the first thing that makes an employee angry, in my opinion.
I did that to Robert.
You did it to Robert?
I did that to Robert once, yeah.
What fish was it? And what was it? Explain the situation.
All right, so it was, I think it was after watching Guppies Fish for Profit, and it's like, all right, I gotta get the cherry shrimp tank going with some guppies, and so I went to the co-op, and I think I was just solo by myself that day. Some stars aligned, and I was able to go in there by myself. And I know that my wife, her feedback was, just get something pretty like blue. She liked blue, and so you had some Japanese blue lace guppies, I think they were.
Yep.
And so I had Robert bag me up a pair because you only had a male-female pair of those.
Yep.
And then I was like, no, God, like I just had this thing in the back of my mind. I really wanted a trio. And then I thought I remember her saying that she also really liked red, so you had the red Delta guppies.
Yeah.
So Robert had bagged up the Japanese, the pair. And I'm like, dude, I'm so sorry, man. Could you please get me a trio of the red Deltas?
And I'm sure he was like, of course.
I don't know if he remembers it or not, though.
He probably doesn't.
Oh,
it happens all the time, but it's just one of those things like you're redoing your work, and it kind of stresses the fish out. Luckily, guppies are super easy to catch, but there are fish where it's like a struggle. Like if you had to get like
Coolie loaches or something,
or reticulated hillstream loaches, and you're battling for like 30 minutes, and they're like, turns out, nah.
Yeah.
You're just like, are you kidding me right now?
Yeah. Nobody tell Robert.
Yeah, hopefully he doesn't. He doesn't even know you shopped there before we hired you.
I bought him lunch before, so we're good.
Everyone's just faceless to Robert. Number 16. 16, please. Not true. We got a $10 Canadian super chat from Backwoods Betta. Well, thank you. I don't know who you are yet, but I know your name now.
I think they're in the backwoods.
That's right.
Thank you.
So I've answered this question a million times. I want to know what your thoughts are. Would you ever franchise Aquarium Co-op?
So I would struggle with that question.
Let's say you own it. Like, let's say I'm just like, let's say it's 20 years down the road, and I'm like even older and crankier than I am, and you're just like the guy. Do you franchise it out? I mean, obviously a lot of things change in 20 years, but like, or what do you think are pros and cons of franchising it out?
So I think answering that with you in the driver's seat now as you are, I would say no, because I don't think anybody out there is up for what it would take to run an Aquarium Co-op franchise to your standard. So if you were in New Jersey and for some reason Corey was like, yep, you've got the keys to the Secaucus, just because we were there, Secaucus Aquarium Co-op franchise branch, he would probably be there breathing down your neck because of your customer obsession.
Probably every 2 weeks I'd be checking standards.
It's like Corey's standards, Corey's work ethic is one that is just really unrivaled. I've worked with a lot of really hardworking people. My
favorite and worst thing of like the last 3 weeks is when you said you were talking to someone else, and it was something about how like I've never worked so hard, and that's coming from Amazon. Like now that you're at Aquarium Co-op,
yeah, but
people struggle to keep up with me a lot of times.
But I've enjoyed it though. So that's the difference though. Like I've always been somebody that strives to do the best that they possibly can and raise the bar and be the jack of all trades wherever I've worked. I worked at Amazon.com, which is just an absolutely, very fast-paced work environment that not a lot of people do well at, and I did well there, and I got promoted and did all that fun stuff. But this has been the first job where I've actually enjoyed like every moment of everything that I'm doing, because it's just immersing myself in the hobby, and really complementing all of the educational and professional experience that I have gathered in the past. And I can now just channel that and just run with, whatever it is that we're doing. So, it has been. It's been, probably the hardest that I've worked, but it's also been incredibly enjoyable. And it's just been, me letting my skills run free. My biggest challenge is when I go somewhere, I learn the processes and I try and push the boundaries of what an organization is doing. And then you're told, oh, no, you can't do that. Like, that's not, like, we don't do that, or that's too far outside the box, or, that's... Like there's all sorts of like corporate excuses that somebody can give, and then it's kind of demoralizing. So then it's, some places like they want you to have your box, they want you to do your job in that box really, really well, and that's fine. But for me, like I constantly need to be outside the box. Like I need to be pushing the boundaries of it. And I think here you've given me the freedom to do that, and I see that there's a lot of runway to make that happen. So franchise, I would say at this time no, because I don't think anybody else would be able to basically work to your standards of just customer satisfaction and tireless drive to have the best products, and to deliver on a promise to customers.
Well, my thought that I've explained before is that it's not that no one can do it, it's that the people that can do it can also just start up their own aquarium store if they want to. Like that's the thing. It's like you don't need the Aquarium Co-op stamp of approval. If you can work that hard and you can do all those things, you could just start Aquarium Store 3. Like you could just be whatever you want. So it's usually people that want the franchise, they want like, I need all that hard work that's done, and then I'm gonna do this, and it'll be less work. And the reality is, people that are successful, you know, even whether it's a Subway franchise or something like that, like you have to put in that 150% work ethic to beat out all the other Subways. Like it's almost harder to be a franchise than it is to do your own thing.
I think underneath that question though is definitely there is like a love for Aquarium Co-op and the brand that you've built, and you know, the culture that this company has. So I would take that as, you know, there's huge appreciation there. I'm glad to be a part of that kind of organization, and hopefully through our YouTube efforts, through social media, through our online presence, that we're just able to satisfy the Aquarius customer needs out there so much that it's okay that we may physically be located in Seattle, Washington, but it feels like, you know, we're just your local neighborhood shop because you've got that connection with us. So
yeah, I see us more figuring out a way to ship fish online and that kind of stuff before I'd be like, how do we open up 5 more shops? Type of deal. Because I already know a scaling issue of too many people in the store. How do we solve that? Like opening more stores wouldn't help that. That'd make that worse. And all of a sudden it's like, Corey's got to make an appearance in 5 stores. He's got to fly around the country, you know, because he's got to hit these 5 stores every Saturday, you know, or something like that. So how much pressurized CO2 do you recommend in a 40-gallon planted? Bubbles per second, hours per day. Happy New Year. Have you done any CO2?
I do, yeah.
All right, what do you got?
So I do, what is it, about 2 bubbles a second. My regulator is just...
On what size tank?
75.
Okay.
So this is the 75-gallon, just absolute mass of green plants in there. I mean, that's basically what I wanted. So stepping into, you know, never having a planted tank, seeing planted tanks online, just knowing that what I wanted was just a tank where plants are going absolutely buck wild, and that's kind of what I have now. So I think I'm at about 3 to 4 bubbles a second, 75-gallon tank. You know, dwarf sedge carpet, you know, stem plants off to the side, big Amazon swords.
How many hours?
Yeah. Oh, how many hours? So I'm still figuring that out, but let's see, what am I doing? Probably about 9 hours. 9 hours of light with CO2. So I've got the timer set up, so the solenoid will turn off with the lights. I'll have the siesta period in the middle of the day, which works out really well. So you wake up early in the morning, and this is more so when I had a job where I was going into Seattle for a commute. So waking up really early, having the light come on really early so I can interact with fish, you know, watch the rainbows do their thing and spawn, and then have it shut down for about 4 or 5 hours midday, or maybe even a little bit more than that, and then be able to come home late at night and still enjoy the tank, feed the fish. And
do you do any offsetting? So like, you know, that last ounce of optimization might be CO2 turns on 1 hour before the light comes on, and then it turns off 1 hour before the light goes out, so you can like preload the CO2, lights are on, and then CO2 stops, so you can use up the CO2 before the lights go out. I've
heard people talk about that. I haven't pulled that trigger yet on that, just because I mean what's going on is working, I guess.
Because the siesta method, a lot of people do that to get further optimization out of their CO2. Where you were doing it because that's how your schedule worked, but most people, you can get better growth if you like burn out your CO2. You're like, okay, I've used it all. Turn the lights out, build up CO2 again, and then like go again. So it's kind of like you could probably run further in a day if you run for like, okay, I ran for 30 minutes, then I ate lunch, chilled out for an hour, then I ran again, then just to like run as absolutely as far as you could in 1 hour, you know, and that's kind of the siesta method there. So, but in a 40-gallon, it can be, you could run an insane amount of CO2 or very little. I typically start every tank I ever work with at like 1 bubble per second. And I think it takes way less CO2 than people think. People kind of just like, more gasoline on the fire is better. Like maybe, but you know, the bigger answer to that question is how many bubbles per second versus how many milliliters of isoprene per day.
Yeah.
Like that's what because we run a lot of plants and a lot of planted tanks, and that's what we're looking at is like you could have CO2 through the roof, but you're being limited by nitrates. Like you're wasting all this CO2. And for us, we go through 20-pound CO2 tanks in like 2 weeks. You know, you kind of look at 50-pound tanks. You're like, okay, we get by a month, but then we gotta like buy a special way to move them back and forth from the place. So we need to dial in. Like we have a legitimate need to match it as closely as we can. Whereas like, oh, I've got a 5-pound cylinder at home. I'm wasting 20% of it. I gotta go get it refilled every 11 months instead of every 13 months. Like, it doesn't hurt that much.
I'm probably 9 months on the same 20-pound cylinder.
Yeah.
So it's
where for us, it might be like, oh, I got to go every week versus, oh, I can go every 3 weeks. Like, that's a huge difference.
I think one of the struggles and the kind of a misconception out there, and maybe it's just that I've got the wrong diffuser, it's too large, but you watch these aquascaping videos and some of the B-roll that guys like to do is the diffuser just
well, and it looks cool.
Yeah, it looks amazing.
Yeah.
But like the reality is, what is that, like 40 bubbles a second to get that diffuser look? And if you've got any fish in there, that's not ever what you're going to run it at. So when you hear somebody say 1 to 3 bubbles a second, and you see how pathetic that looks coming out of your diffuser, you're like, well, that's not the
There's
amazing...
plenty of tricks. Like, so when we were in when I was in Germany. I was in Germany for this one, and Tropica had a booth, and all their plants are just purling like crazy. And they've got CO2 going in there, and legit, I was like. So, me being naive, I'm like, wow, Tropica's known to be really good with plants. What is your secret to getting them purling this hard? I've never been able to achieve that in my warehouse or my store. And then they were just doing the trick. And I was like, oh, I feel so... It's like, it's like you found out something's not real.
You're like, no water until
No,
the show
so
started?
there's a well-known trick between people that take photography or photos of tanks and that kind of stuff, and you just use carbonated water. So they're literally just like every morning they're like, watch this, I'm going to dump 10 gallons of carbonated water in there, super high CO2, and it just adheres to everything. Kind of like when you do a water change, you get all those bubbles on your plants, except it'll do it for like 8 hours at a time. And so here I was just going, well, it's Tropica, they've got this reputation. Clearly, they must like, how'd you get it to be balanced so well to do this? And I was like, oh, you're just using the trick.
That's funny.
There's a lot of tricks that you don't need to know on a daily basis. Like another one, you can take carbonated water, and the right mix of carbonated water, you put fish into it, they'll look like they're dead. So if you wanted to be dishonest and you're ordering fish online and they're like, take a picture of it dead, you get it to roll over, it looks totally dead, then you put it back in fresh, it wakes back up. Yeah, so there's all these like quasi tricks you can do, that being around in the industry and working in there for 10 plus years, you learn, you pick up, you're like, oh, that's a trick, okay.
Don't do those bad tricks.
Yeah, those are still just being dishonest. So that's the thing, is like I share it with people and it's like, whether I share it or not doesn't change whether that's a good or bad person. Like there's other ways to fake things and do stuff, and like nowadays, why even go through? So this is old school tricks, right? Before PayPal. Now you just go, I'm gonna just charge it back. PayPal side with me. Like you don't even have to like fake it anymore. You just like click a button and PayPal sides with the customer anyway. But there is cool tricks. Like I've never needed to use it, but. You need to know about it. Like I used to sell a lot of fish on Aquabid, so you needed to know how could you fake dead fish, and that's why there's one of two things that happen. Everyone always wants to see it in the original bag, which you can still fake that. You can just be like, oh, I'm gonna do it,
Right.
Or some will go as far as they want the head cut off. It's a common thing of like, I need the fish cut in half or something like that. And it's gruesome, except you got to realize out of the 5,000 people before you, 22 of them faked to the death and cost them money, and they learn from that.
So I've heard about the whole like decapitate the fish or mutilate it in some way so that it's dead. But now hearing that, the whole carbonated water thing, carbonated soda, whatever it was, is a way to make the fish look dead. Now it's like, okay, I guess that's why it's a thing. Which is freaking terrible that in this hobby that it even has to be a thing. But
but crazy knowledge like that, and it was just like being let down, I guess. Because I was so excited to like, oh my god, I'm gonna figure out, because I want my tank and plants to look that good, purling that much, utilizing it that well, and then just be like, oh, like I don't know. I just expected more because the show was only for vendors, right? Like I just assumed better.
Yeah. But
they're just preying on like if you were the Petco buyer, you'd be like, yeah, Tropica plants are the best. I'm gonna bring those into Petco. Meanwhile, the Petco buyer knows dogs and cats anyway. So like they're preying on that. That was like the unfortunate part. I felt like, anyone that really knew was just like, oh, geez, come on. Because I was asking like, let me see the CO2 system. Where's the reactors? Like, how are you pulling this off?
And they hand you an empty 2 liters. There you go.
Below, it's all 2 liters of carbonated water. It's like, oh, geez, come on. But that gets you. A lot of staging goes on. Like when you take photos for the competitions, like people lust after these aquascapes, and when you're looking at the pictures, realize they've taken out all the equipment and the water's rippling over the top because they're using a hair dryer that's out of the picture, you don't see. They've got lighting coming up from the back to give it, the right look. Like, these are not sustainable things. These are all done to make a perfect picture happen.
Which I guess we really shouldn't be too surprised, knowing that what we do in like the food industry, right? Like when McDonald's takes a picture of their newest hamburger, like that is a doctored up hamburger with all the lighting and all the tricks of the industry.
But I do think there's something different there. When you see, let's say, the Big Mac in all its glory with their doctoring, at home, you could make a burger that tasted ridiculously good and looked really good, right? I think it wouldn't look the same. Like, I don't know that you could make the exact same thing, but when you were done, you'd be like, this thing looks just as good as that thing. I can't wait to take a bite. And then you do, and it's great. Now, when you see that crazy doctored aquascaping photo, and then you try to replicate it at home, there are things that are literally impossible, like all the Ricky on stones. Like, it doesn't grow that way. It only rots that way. So you're doing it specifically for a picture. There's things that just can't be done. It'd be like if McDonald's was building it out of clay and then taking the picture, like, you can't build out of clay. You got to build out a real bun and all that kind of stuff. So I do think there's a little bit there of, like, we could make something. The average person, I think, can make a burger that looks ridiculously good and might taste ridiculously good, whereas an aquascape, I don't think the average person, that has never aquascaped before is even going to get close without using a bunch of those tricks.
Yeah, I wonder if do any of the competitions take that into consideration? Like, that is actually something that will run. We will dock you points.
So there are some, like, I've talked to Karen Randall about that. There are some things, like, definitely at the Aquatic Experience, I know, like, fish health matters. Also, is this scape sustainable matters. But I don't know the weights. So, like, if that's 2 points out of 100, or what if that's 20 points out of 100? I have no idea the weights, but I do know some of those, and some competitions factor that in way more than others. But I personally think, for the hobby to get stronger, the winner should be something that's, like, actually kept at home and sustainable, as opposed to, like, I took the best picture. Like, I almost feel like when you go to the ALA, for instance, American Library Association convention, they have all the live fish and they're judged, but then there's also a picture category that gets judged. And I feel like that's almost how maybe aquascaping should go. Like, here's all the pictures, like, what's the best possible picture you could get from your aquarium, and then, like, here's the best aquariums that are actually aquariums. There's the equipment. There's there's the Twin Star, anti-algae thing sitting there. Like, taking all the things, what it looks like, when you're in your sweatpants, you just woke up. What does that aquarium look like? Instead of, it's the same difference of everyone looks a certain way, and then they look a certain way on the day they got married. You don't look that way every day. That's the best you could pretty much possibly look at that point for most people. Like, that's the culmination of their life. And then the day after is, like, just strictly worse. For you're not wearing a $3,000 dress or a $1,000 tux anymore. You're like, oh, I'm wearing an Aquarium Co-op shirt that I got free when I bought a bottle of Easy Green one time, or I met him in person. Like, so I think it should be a little more realistic, or at least categories that differentiate between that. Like, I don't think we have to get rid of that style, but it also
because I mean they're absolutely amazing to look at. Like, they're very captivating. But I definitely do like this idea of, here's kind of your fantasy-esque scape that is pretty much going to fall apart the moment this show is over. And then here are the sustainable tanks, right? So.
Like, it'd be a cool category of, I'd love to see. No, I don't want to call it an aquascaping tank. I want to call it, here's an aquarium that hasn't had maintenance in 2 weeks. Like, that's the parameter it has to have. Like, so you might even see a little bit of algae. You might see, like, oh, the moss hasn't been cut in 2 weeks. It's getting longer. Like, what's the best looking tank in the, well, I got busy because it's Christmas mode. Or, like, that's worth something to me.
Or a category of who incorporates algae the best.
Yeah, just a realistic thing of, like, oh, I have kids, or oh, I got busy at work, or whatever, and not like, I took 3 years off work so I could get this one picture. Like, that's not a realistic thing. And that just doesn't excite me. Yeah.
Nothing just went off.
Every hour. Nice. It updates. I am always way more impressed by something. When I go, ooh, I could do that, I'm super impressed. When I look at it and go, that's insane, I would never even attempt that, I'm not nearly as impressed. Just because when I, like, if someone was driving the same car I drive and they're winning races, I'd be like, oh man, I could do that. But then if you show me like, oh, you're driving a Formula One car, like I'm not that impressed because it's like I don't even know what it takes to drive one of those cars. Like I can't even, connect with that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I guess I'm kind of in both camps, right? Like one, it's just absolutely amazing to see that Formula One or that crazy aquascape. It's a little disheartening to think that certain features would just instantly rot because that's not how they go, right? But at the same time, like I would want to see what those realistic tanks look like, and something that I could replicate at home. Like actually, I think when you showed off your dwarf Sag carpet in your was it like the 200 in your house?
Yep.
Like that made me go, oh, I could probably do that. So I went ahead and threw dwarf Sag in my tank, and it's doing great.
All right, gotta catch up on some of these super chats. James Bear cannot seem to keep cherry shrimp. They just disappear. There's no bodies, no trace. Tank mates are black neons, head and tail light tetras, dwarf gouramis, half dozen albino cories. Any suggestions? I think you've kept shrimp, yeah?
Well, it sounds like maybe everything's picking off the babies, and then the adults just
die
off, and they're not able to reproduce.
Maybe you don't have an intake sponge. Like maybe babies are getting sucked up.
Yeah, what's your filtration? Yeah, that's...
My advice is always start a dedicated shrimp tank. Yeah. And then when you're like, man, these things are cockroaches, then start putting them into other tanks where they could get picked off. And then you go, and then you'll be like wishing they got picked off, and then they don't get picked off.
Yeah.
So that's where I would start, just because you could have a whole like, oh, the water parameters aren't right, or is it the fish, or is it this other thing? Right now, there's so many things going on. You'd be like, it could be any of those. My advice doesn't really help, and I get that.
Yeah.
But when you go, okay, I've got these parameters, it's only these guys. Where's going wrong? It's a lot easier to go, try this, make this one tweak.
Yeah, and based off your water parameters out of the tap, I mean, I know some people that have shared stories of they can't keep cherry shrimp just to save their life, but Caridina, right? Some of these bee shrimp, it's no problem for them. So could be one of those situations.
All right. We've got someone who looks like they were able to quit smoking. These days, I breed Rasbora hets zebrafish. Best of all, my local fish store gave me a 33-gallon tank as a Christmas gift for the autocinkless babies. Wow. This took over his smoking habit.
Awesome.
That is awesome. That is, so it's, if you've never worked at a pet store, when you do, you'll learn that addiction, one, we're addicted to fish, but we know that as a society. So, like, we get a lot of people that are addicted to drugs or alcoholism, and the best way to get over it is to find a new healthy addiction. And so there's a couple parts to that. One is like take on some responsibility. One is replace the addiction. And so a lot of it is like kind of getting a pet or a dog or a cat. But if you were like, let's say, really addicted to drugs or something, you might not be able to have an apartment or a house where you're like, I'm gonna get a dog. They might be like, nope, you can't. But most places you can get a fish tank. You get that responsibility of like, I'm responsible for a living being. And then it's very common to see them get really addicted to it because they already have an addictive personality. And sometimes you can have to reel them back in of like, you've got 17 fish tanks, you've been into it for a month. Like, I realize this is like therapy and helping you, but at a certain point, we need to think about the animals too. And so you run into that quite a bit, and you see a lot of these success stories. And the common cycle is they go in like really, 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 really hard. And then like 2 years later, they're like, I am way too into this. I need to like step back and like, because they break the addiction. And then eventually they're like, oh yeah, I got to have a job and I got to do all these things. I don't have 80 hours a week to do the maintenance anymore, So, but that's super cool. And I'm glad that the store is like taking care of you type of thing. There's a lot of stores that they just be like, cool, keep giving me free fish, instead of like nothing back. And I always feel bad about that. In an automatic water change system, how is water dechlorinated? How are you doing it?
Carbon block.
Me too. Yep. Carbon block filters, kind of like the whole house filters. That's the way I typically try and tackle it. And it works at the store, works for me, works for you. At chloramines, you got to have a way bigger carbon block filter, but...
Yeah, my water change system is a carbon block and just a normal filter after that. So a sediment filter. So
yeah.
Two systems.
I don't even use a sediment filter.
Really?
Yeah.
Dean did it, so I said, all right, well, if Dean's doing it, I'm going to do it.
Dean's that, whatever you're doing, it's one extra. He's that guy. Like, well, oh, you're doing that?
He probably added a third one now that I copied him.
Now that he just heard that, he's redoing the whole system. Oh, I see. I'm on Randy's level? Oh, no. Nico is a longtime viewer and guppy lover. All right, we're already best friends. I've recently become plagued with blue-green algae in my planted tank. Any tips on how to get rid of it or get it under control? you know the answer?
You asked Corey at Aquarium Co-op.
Yes, I could tell you. So my advice that works, erythromycin, because blue-green algae is a bacteria, and we need to kill it. Now, that doesn't mean that it would never come back. We haven't addressed the source of it, but how do we get rid of it? Erythromycin is the way I do it. In general, my steps are do a good tank cleaning, and what I mean by that is, like, if you have big sheets of it, like, get that crap off there and kind of throw it away. Service filtration, and all this wouldn't be done the same day, by the way, but you'd service filtration. Maybe you go, oh yeah, I should add an air stone because I never had one. Maybe I need to add a circulation pump because circulation's not that good. And then a few days later, you put in erythromycin. It clears out all that bacteria in the nooks and crannies and everything. And then hopefully the changes you made make it so it doesn't come back.
Nice. No
one knows the actual original source of it. And there's a lot of rumors of like, oh, it's low phosphates, it's high phosphates, low nitrate, high nitrate. Like, there's so many studies being done, and it is a problem in lakes and rivers and that kind of stuff. So like legit studies are being done, but they continually disprove each other. Like, turns out almost anything can cause it, and we kind of can or can't replicate it. I don't know, but for sure, in my experience, erythromycin has always gotten rid of it. So I know how to kill it. I don't know how to prevent it. That's the one thing.
Where did you find out to use erythromycin?
The previous store I worked for.
Oh, nice.
So it was, I assume, like maybe I Googled it. I don't know the answer, but I know I at least learned while I was there, and that's how I know it's not low nitrates causes it, because we never had auto water changes there, and there's 300 tanks and only 2 people that worked there. And so that meant each day you had to get 10 tanks cleaned. And anyone that works at a fish store knows you're not cleaning 10 tanks on the weekends. And then we were also closed Mondays. So it was an impossible situation to really keep up on water changes. And there were some that were like, nitrates are 300 parts per million. And there's tons of blue-green algae. There's no way that it was low nitrates causing it. Like, that's impossible for at least that tank. And so, yeah, we would clean it up. And that's where, out of 300 tanks, maybe you get it out. 1 tank or 2 tanks get it every month out of 300 tanks, and you could keep it from coming back. But usually the more work you put in, like, oh, I'm gonna overhaul this tank, then it wouldn't come back. But if you were just like, oh, I'm gonna clean it, then you'd be like, 2 months later it's back. And it's mostly because, like, well, if the stock didn't change much, the way you're feeding didn't change, the filtration maybe was still inadequate or different or whatever. Yeah, so that's the best tips I have. I wish there was the bullet answer. And which, by the way, I think green slime remover, they sell it in saltwater, so blue-green algae and saltwater, same problem. I'm fairly certain it's just erythromycin. Is it Chemi-Clean's blue-green slime remover? I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Interesting.
Even though it's like a proprietary, I think on the box says like a proprietary product, or something that like basically
maybe there's
says,
an extra sprinkle of something in there.
Yeah. Basically something that kind of, it's like, oh, you basically just said it's not erythromycin, it's erythromycin type of deal. All right. Would you ever consider allowing other stores to sell your product Easy Green as well as allow... As well, do you allow fish store your videos from other channels? Hint, hint. My brain is like, it's like broken here. Do you allow fish store your videos, like to use them maybe?
This feels like the license plate game where you're trying to figure out the vanity plates.
Like,
well, I think the first part of it is, we can tackle the Easy Green question.
So far I've done testing in 1 store. And I don't see how it benefits Aquarium Co-op at all. Like, don't get me wrong, I realize that walking in and being able to buy it and retail it, there's benefits to a customer, some. But the other thing is, a lot of times, so it goes back to the franchise thing. How is it on the shelf? Did you properly educate them that they need to regulate how to use Easy Green based on measuring nitrates in their aquarium? Or did you just like let them buy it and walk off, and now they're going, my nitrates are through the roof, no one told me, blah, blah, blah. Like,
yeah, I think the education piece is huge on there, that, maybe the store owner is able to convince us and say, yep, I will educate every single employee or every single customer. But what if the employees don't have that same mentality, right? So I think, the onus would be on Aquarium Co-op to make sure that we disseminate the information about Easy Green and make sure that all the customers that purchase from us are as educated as we possibly can.
The other problem I see is that, like any product, so like for instance, let's use this other product here, Vibrabites. Even though I sell it from my store, X amount of people are going to be like, oh, I'm going to go to Hikari.com and ask them the question. So I'm going to increase my question load where I've made less money. So at wholesale, clearly you sold it less than if you sold it at retail. And a lot of our products being done ourselves were never built to be wholesaled out. Mm-hmm. So there's not enough profit margin laying around to make that a winning scenario. Now, do you allow Fish Store to maybe use your videos? Yes, I don't have a problem with that. Mm-hmm. Like, there's definitely stores that play it in the store and that kind of thing. Like, I don't really have a problem with that. If you're asking a different question, I'm misinterpreting that sentence differently. There's a couple of I would say exceptions. If you were a store that could distribute, like, I would wholesale it to some other online stores if you were in a different country. Like, if you were a Canadian online retailer, I'd be much more tempted to sell to you because, one, I can't sell the product to you, like, in Canada. And B, we could have a little bit of stipulations like, yeah, you got to have this informational video on the product page so that anyone could reasonably click that, watch the thing, and go, oh, I know how to use it now. Same thing like in the UK. There's some other places where if you could get it to someone I couldn't already get it to, I'm more open to hearing about that.
So what about with us? English is our primary language, right? Mm-hmm. So Canada, we'd be okay. Although we do have to consider
like Quebec and stuff.
We have to consider, right?
Yeah, we've run into that before.
So
yeah.
So then now are we going to be answering emails in French?
Right. It gets hard.
Like, don't get me wrong. Like, these are all questions and thoughts that are in my head of how do we get the Aquarium Co-op brand and product out there more. But mm-hmm. like, there's like legitimate, difficult questions and challenges and hurdles that we have to face. In order to do that and to do it successfully, right? And it's not just all about making money, a quick buck. Like, we want it to carry the same quality, we want it to carry the same customer experience, and not have people feel like they got burned on an Aquarium Co-op product.
So. Nasely Media says, I remember in a previous video, Bob mentioned you said everything's for sale if the price is right. Would you sell the co-op if a high bid was placed? You asked me this. You asked me this before you came on, and I said yes. And I said,
well, if somebody dropped like $1 billion.
Well, so I think, and hold me to this. And if I say something that I didn't say, or I said something different, let people know. But I believe my response was, and to the best of my recollection, it would have to be enough money to make a difference to me and every single one of my employees' lives where they got like a house bought outright for them. For me to give it up.
I don't remember you saying that, but now that you mentioned that specific part, yes, that is the conversation that we had.
And I do believe that. So if there was enough money where every employee, like let's say they all got $300,000 and we took out this big, huge buyout, and obviously it might be like, oh, Corey got $10 million and then he like distributed $5 million over the employees and they all got $300,000 or something. And they could all just buy a house outright. I don't think they would be super disappointed that we sold out. And I say we, because we all got something out of it. And then at the same time, I'd want to know, like, what do myself and my team want to do now? Like, do we want to get into RC cars? Do we want to do a different aquatic business? Like, probably we wouldn't be allowed to be in aquatics, but maybe we could be in dogs and cats. Or maybe we don't want to do this at all. But I would want to take the same team of people and be like, what could we all do together now? Like, clearly we did it.
Could we do the RC thing in parallel to Aquarium Co-op? Because that sounds like a lot of fun.
I know. Jimmy was, because I was complaining about not having a hobby, and Jimmy's like, RC cars.
Dude.
And I was like,
I was just thinking about pulling. My wife might be watching this live stream, but I swear, dude, I want to go and get one of the nice, ready to run electric car kits. But
as I told Jimmy, like, I'm not rich enough for that. That's a rich man's game. Like, those things break every 4 seconds. Like, you're like, I hit the wall again. Like,
come out to my house, man. My terrain is perfect for like a nice buggy. Ooh.
All right. Alrighty. So yes, I would sell if the price was right, but that is my legit answer. I wouldn't just be like, oh, cool, I took $500K, I'm out. Sorry about that, employees. Like that. That wouldn't happen. I couldn't say wouldn't because there's always a scenario of like, oh, my wife's got terminal cancer. The cure is $500K. I would take that. I'd save her life for it. There's always a scenario of somewhere where you're like, you said you wouldn't do that. Like, didn't know that was going to happen.
Right.
That's always a technicality type of thing. All right. I need help killing BGA. Removing it didn't help. Blackouts for 5 days aren't killing it enough. I think we addressed that a little bit earlier.
We did.
Erythromycin. And so you are proving that like the blackouts and the manual removal, it just doesn't get it. Like in this sponge, no matter how much I clean it under the tap, there's gonna be bacteria in here that's gonna restart the blue-green algae. You just have to like chemically treat it. Mm-hmm. So that's my goal. Ginger Graves was listening to the old Real Fish Talk on the Coop app, laughing at you and Joel argue under gravel filters. Yes, Joel hates them. I love them. Do you have one running? If so, what are the results? I've got 4 10-gallon tanks and I like them. Randy, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Ginger.
I don't have any currently running, but I did just order some like racks, and I'm gonna buy some tanks. And my goal, I don't want all my competitors to steal my goal, but my goal is definitely to set up a bunch of tanks and play with some stuff. And it may or may not be that an underground filter is part of that plan, but I don't have any currently run. No, that's not true. I got one on the 800-gallon in the sump. I got a big old one running.
You have to have the little carbon though. The little carbon, little things up at the top. That is like quintessential what I remember as a kid of our tank.
Yes. I hate carbon. You know that. It's not I hate it.
There's not a single tank I have that I run carbon. So
I have, between the store and my own home, I'm the same way. So we're on the same page. Danny McCoy, who he's up in Bellingham, I believe, just remember Remy reminding me to do about collecting. He wants to go collect with us like in Florida or something like that. Can't wait to see you guys in the store. Welcome to the Coop. Randy, I just watched Breeding for Profit. Anything you would add now? There might be a whole, like, if there was going to be the 7th video, because I'd have to rewatch them to know, have I covered this enough? But now, 3 years down the road, for sure, video number 7 would be like, here's how you're going to do social media, because that's how things actually sell. It would be that, and here's how to run an affiliate program that actually works. So like I run an affiliate program for the co-op, where if you're an influencer, you can recommend products, we pay you, and it's a working thing. Same thing, if you were breeding fish for profit, you have to get your name out there, and you need people to vouch for you. Like, and if like let's say you were breeding fish, I got your fish and I love them, and then I'm like, sweet, these are awesome, and we've got thousands and thousands of views. People are going, where'd you buy them? It makes sense that, oh sweet, I make $5 every time you guys buy fish, you know, and then that makes it like, oh, I should do more videos, I should educate more.
So is that person breeding for profit? Are they then moving to Aquabid or some other way to get online sales?
Yes,
okay,
and
so this is beyond just your local fish store connection.
Yeah, and I might, in that episode talk about how I talk with high-level manufacturers. So let's say it's like, and it's not this company, but I don't want to name a company I do talk with. But let's say I was talking at a high level with Hikari, which I'm not. But if I was, we might be talking about the decline of stores, like how we're losing online market share. Like the number of Vibrabites isn't really like, this is a newer product, but let's say they're algae wafers. The number of algae wafers being sold isn't going down, but the number being sold in a retail store is. Like, it's the same amount. People are just going online. And so what I might do is I might say, like, yes, utilize any retail store you can, but know that every year we're going more and more online. So if you don't adopt that, as those stores go out of business, so will your business model. Yeah. And so when I originally did it 3 or 4 years ago, I was much more in the mindset of I owned a retail store, just starting YouTube, and in general, there was a lot more stores back then. I've watched lots of stores go out of business just in our area in that time. And so I would have the caveat of like, I used to think you could make all the money you ever needed to just with local wholesalers and stores. That can still happen. Like Dean, he only sells his fish to stores. Like he doesn't have to sell online. He can sell every fish he makes through the stores. We have, in my opinion, a very strong local fish store economy, if you will. And so, but I don't think you could do that in half the other states in the country. And so you'd be forced to go online. So,
okay.
Yeah. All right. Nico says, thanks for the tips. Sounds good. Will medication stain acrylic tanks? I've never had that happen yet. I think you're a glass guy.
A glass, yeah.
I don't think I've witnessed a medication stain an acrylic tank yet.
If you overdid methylene blue or ICX, could you potentially stain your silicone?
Silicone for sure. Yeah. But acrylic doesn't use silicone. So yeah, I would say I've never seen it. And like if I was gonna see it, it would be our quarantine tanks. Gallons of meds have been through those things at this point, and I don't see any difference in the seams or anything. So
there's certainly no visible tint.
I'm sure there are meds that I've never used where it's like, oh, that thing does a crazy thing with the chemical reaction, but I've never ran into it. So if you want to educate all your customers without teaching them individually, why not use QR codes with links to tutorials on videos? Mostly because 9 out of 10 people don't know how to use a QR code. Like, and that's a high percentage. But I bet you I could make a claim that 6 out of 10 people can't pull up a QR code if I was to walk in person and ask them. They'd be like, you could do it with an iPhone, but it would be like one of those things of like, I didn't know it could do that. Yeah. You know? But like my wife, for instance, if I had a QR code, she'd be like, I don't know how to do that. Yeah. You know? And so when you have a thing where 6 out of 10 won't be able to do it, that's not really doing the education. I've had that idea for a long time. At one point in the store, I wanted every tank, like the fish tags, let's say it was like neon tetra, you know, $2, and then a QR code, and then you could bring up a thing, and it was a video of me explaining neon tetras. That seems great, except most people don't know how to use a QR code. So that's why I don't do that. And it takes up space, and space is valuable. They got to use it.
Yeah, and even in previous sales jobs, when you give people an information pamphlet with their invoice that has all of the pertinent information that they may need for their product, they still won't read that. So there's always that challenge too, that people may know how to use QR codes, but it's just that initial initiative to actually want to go out and find it yourself as opposed to just emailing directly. So yeah, that's a challenge too.
Miko says, I'm not a crackhead. I don't appreciate being contrasted as one, just kicking smoking out of my life. I wasn't contrasting you as a crackhead. I was just saying that people with addiction, which smoking is an addiction, that is how they kick it. Like you said, I was smoking. I've now quit smoking and replaced that with fish. You replaced one addiction with fish. Then I go, look at all these other addictions to get replaced with fish. So I get it. You're sensitive about it, but I don't feel any worse for making that leap in logic because I do that all the time, all day long. That's why people watch this. I go, oh, you did a thing? Here's another thing that's similar to that. So, yeah. So I'll say, I apologize that you don't like that, but I won't apologize for what I did because that's what I do all the time. So, you know, it's one of those things. There's a lot of people that will like backpedal and be like, oh, I'm sorry, I'll never do that again. I like to be honest and go, I'm sorry that you are upset, but this is the way I will continue to do it. You know, because there's been other people that have like, I just want you to apologize. And I'm like, I'll apologize, but I'm not sorry for it. What do you mean you're not sorry? I'm not sorry for doing that. And that's one of those cases of like, I'm not sorry. Now, maybe I got to go listen back and maybe I said something I didn't mean, but to the best of my knowledge, I made a perfect transition from one addiction to another. And it could be an addiction to candy or soda, or, you know, you replace an addictive behavior with another addictive behavior. It's a common, well-documented thing in psychology.
Yep. Nicotine is highly addictive. So
yeah. So didn't mean it to be super personal about you. It's one of those things that in the future, if you're sensitive about that subject, maybe don't bring that up on a live stream with thousands of people. Yeah. So there you go. Jessica Pierre Ford, thank you for running a great business model and genuinely caring for the employees as well as the animals you care. I'm excited for 2019. Happy holiday. So yes, what do we, like, we're an hour and 10 minutes into this thing, and we haven't really talked about some of the changes. So I know some of them we're testing some products getting a lot cheaper. So right now, like I can tell you guys kind of what we're doing is we're seeing like, if this product is already as cheap, we can't sell this product any cheaper than it is. It's MAP pricing. So if you don't know what that is, minimum advertised price. Like, I think we sell it for $21.29. We literally won't be allowed to sell it anymore if we sell it for less. So that
they will email us and tell us.
Yeah, which has happened because they didn't actually get in my car, drive, and go get one. The reality is probably not. So they should probably just keep that 20 cents. Buying how much more and doing. What else are we doing that's new for this year? Shipping.
Yeah, shipping.
We're playing with shipping. We're testing a lot more shipping models. We still have these things, the
The data loggers.
The data loggers, and we're collecting right now. We're ordering up different. It's way too hot, then it gets way too cold, then it gets hot again. So we're gonna test all that. I can see our internet connection like going out here. Hopefully that's not a problem. Yeah, it's like yeah, our internet is going way wonky. Hopefully it's okay. Let's see here. If I can get to the right screen. Oh, it's this screen right here. Yeah, it's cutting back in. If not, I apologize. We're just gonna keep going. Well, it is crashing here. I can see. No good. We'll just wait for it and be like, Let's look at the live chat. The live chat is always the best source of like, the internet's down, we're dead. Yeah, the new guy's breaking the internet. I know. It's my fancy computer. It's got something weird going on with the Ethernet port, and it does it like once every 2 weeks, and so it makes it crazy hard to diagnose when the rest of the time it works. And you start working on it, and you're like, I didn't do anything. It's just working now. So
I think the chat's gonna kick me out of the room.
That's right. Dang it, buffering. They call him buffering, Randy. But changes we're making. So first, we're gonna fix that. That's one change we're gonna implement in 2019.
Internet connection.
What else? So the packaging thing, we're working on that. We're definitely, I would say, sitting down at the table with more vendors. Like the goal is one-on-one conversation. If they're willing to sell, let's say, this product at $17 and we have to sell it at $21. So yeah, swim bladder issue, not so much, I think. Is there something to prevent ram eggs from... Yeah, it's like stuck in like a reconnecting phase.